Are you better off spending less on the Pico 4, spending approximately $430-ish to $500, or jumping straight into the deep end of the pool and spending over $1,100 on the HTC Vive XR Elite? Well, let's get into it and we'll find out. I personally would expect the $1,100 headset to walk all over the $400 to $500 headset, as one should rightly expect to get more if they spend more. As someone who has both of these headsets and have used both of these headsets, things don't really play out as one would expect. Both devices are running the Qualcomm Snapdragon XR2 chip, and for memory, you're actually getting 12 gigabytes with the XR Elite versus the Pico 4, where you're only getting 8. While both are using the same chip, that increase in memory could show a benefit with the XR Elite, though I personally haven't detected that. As far as battery life goes for the two devices, I get around 2-ish hours for both. The key difference being that with the XR Elite, you can buy a second back half that includes the battery from HTC's website for around $200, and when the battery dies, you can swap it out. But I find this approach to not only be quite pricey, but inconvenient in the moment as well. A better approach is simply to buy a battery pack like the one I'll link in the description with a minimum of 30 watt hours and plug it into the back here and extend your playtime and maybe buy a secondary battery to swap out. While the Pico 4 doesn't have the second back half that you could buy, since I don't recommend that approach anyway, and since the battery pack approach can be done with the Pico 4, I find that in the battery department, they are basically equals. For storage, the XR Elite only offers the 128 gigabyte model, while the Pico 4 offers both a 128 gigabyte model and a 256 gigabyte model. This is obviously relevant, as with larger storage, more things can be stored when dealing with standalone, and this is a clear win for the Pico 4. As far as the built-in mic and audio, I find them both to be about standard for these devices, not amazing, but acceptable, and I also don't find that either device pulls ahead of the other in this department. And for refresh rate, you get 90 Hz with both. And while it would be nice to have a higher refresh rate on them, like say, 120, I find 90 Hz to work just fine. Moving on to the lenses, both of them have pancake lenses, though looking at them, there is a glaring difference between them, which we will discuss later. Their IPDs are approximately the same, ranging from 54-ish millimeters to 73-ish millimeters. The one difference here being that on the Pico 4, you adjust the IPD from inside the headset, and on the XR Elite, you adjust it with the knob on the bottom of the headset. Both headsets display the IPD number in the headset as you adjust it. In addition to adjusting the IPD, the XR Elite offers something the Pico 4 doesn't, which is the ability to adjust your lenses to your prescription up to a point by turning the lenses themselves. The headset will walk you through this process. The Pico 4 doesn't offer this, and instead they offer a glasses spacer you can use, or you can buy glasses inserts for your lenses. Both headsets have pretty decent pass-through from a 16 megabyte RGB camera, and when viewing the color pass-through in the headset, I would rate them as comparable in quality to each other, with neither headset seeming to provide the superior color pass-through experience. I find this uniquely interesting as the XR Elite has a depth sensor, which in theory should give the XR Elite a leg up over the Pico 4, but from my experience, this is not the case. Moving on to the resolution, the Pico 4 has 2160 by 2160 per eye, while the XR Elite has 1920 by 1920 per eye. On paper, this difference is glaring, and when viewed from the headset, I find the Pico 4 to have a better quality image that is super sharp, as well as the colors seem to just pop a bit more on the Pico 4 than on the XR Elite. Back to the lenses, the glaring difference, as mentioned earlier, is that the Pico 4 ones are substantially bigger than the XR Elite ones, so one might reasonably expect the Pico 4 to have the larger FOV, or field of view. But on their websites, the Pico 4 advertises a FOV of 105 degrees, while on the HTC's website they advertise up to 110 degrees. Now when I measured the FOVs of these devices, on the Pico 4 I get 102 horizontal and 102 vertical, while on the XR Elite I get 100 horizontal and 80 on the vertical. To me, this speaks to a more honest advertised specs on the part of the Pico 4, as their advertised specs more closely aligns to what I measured, as opposed to the very vague wording on the HTC's website, which I found very misleading. When in games, you're most definitely seeing more of the virtual world with the Pico 4 than you are in the XR Elite, and the difference is quite glaring. That loss of approximately 22 degrees on the vertical with the XR Elite is quite brutal, and for me, completely kills the VR experience. Moving on to the size of these two devices, the Pico 4 weighs in at 667 grams for me. Be advised, my Pico 4 has two upgrades that may affect the weight: the AMVR facial interface and the Bobo VR battery dock. So if you're measuring your stock, you may get a slightly different number, but it will not be much of a difference to really matter. The XR Elite in standard format weighs in at 611 grams, so approximately 56 grams lighter than the Pico 4, but in wearing these two devices, I personally didn't find that difference in weight noticeable. With the XR Elite though, you have the option of converting it to a glasses format by removing the back half and attaching these glasses pieces. When you do that, the XR Elite now weighs in at a mere 283 grams, which in theory should make the XR Elite quite comfortable to wear. In this format though, you will experience a lot of glare on your lenses due to light coming in the sides. The problem is not so bad in standard format, as you're able to tighten down the back and reduce some of the light coming in the sides, though there still will be some light that gets in the sides. So basically, the choice for the XR Elite is standard format, 611 grams, less light coming in the sides, or glasses format, 283 grams, much more light coming in the sides and glare on the lenses. And with the Pico 4, well, there's only the one choice. It's 667 grams, but a facial interface that pretty much keeps out the light, so no glare. Both devices have standalone capability, meaning you can download games directly to the headset to play, or you can connect them wired or wireless to your PC. For standalone purposes, HTC's library feels a tad lighter than the Pico 4's, but this wouldn't surprise me as the XR Elite has just come out, and the Pico 4 has been out for a while. Over time, HTC's library will probably grow. For my preferred form of VR, PC VR, you can connect both to your PC either wired or wireless using their unique streaming software. It's a toss-up to me which of these streaming softwares is better, and I personally prefer to use the virtual desktop, which is available on both and is far superior to either of their streaming softwares. This is where we encounter a large difference between these two headsets. The Pico 4 only supports your standard Wi-Fi 6 using the 5 GHz frequency, but the XR Elite supports the Wi-Fi 6E, which opens up the 6 GHz frequency. For me, this difference was most obvious when playing Beat Saber, which for me, I typically play wired into my PC for max performance. For this testing purposes, I ran Beat Saber wireless using virtual desktop during the weekend and during a time where I would normally receive the most congestion on Wi-Fi. As you can see, on the Pico 4, my network issues were severe to the point where it was almost unplayable, but on the XR Elite, running off that 6 GHz frequency, while I noticed some minor network issues, they didn't affect my play overall, so the ability to use that Wi-Fi 6E is a major win for the XR Elite. For controllers, both are using your standard controllers with tracking rings and tracked with cameras on the headsets. The two big differences with these controllers: one, the Pico 4 controllers have far superior haptics over the XR Elite controllers. I noticed this the most in Beat Saber, as I realized I'd come to rely on feeling the blocks being cut And with the XR Elite, I wasn't feeling it anymore, which affected my performance. And 2, the batteries in these controllers. In the Pico 4, each controller takes 2 AA batteries, which you can swap out for fresh batteries when they die. The XR Elite controllers have a built-in battery that has approximately 15 hours of playtime and will need to be recharged by plugging the cable they send into the controller and into whatever charging option you have, as they don't actually provide one. I prefer the Pico 4 approach with using the AA batteries. What this allows me to do is keep 2 sets of rechargeable batteries, one in the controllers and one on standby, and when I need fresh batteries, I simply swap them out. I'm not locked into having to always remember to charge the controllers or anything, which has actually been an issue for me with the XR Elite. In addition, the controllers for the Pico 4 perform better and are tracked better by the headset than the XR Elite controllers do. This could simply be a software issue, and maybe over time with enough software updates, the XR Elite controllers may improve, but at the time of this recording, the win goes to the Pico 4 controllers. Now, after all that, has the HTC Vive XR Elite offered enough value to justify that $1,100 price tag? Or did the Pico 4, priced at roughly $400 to $500, just demolish it? Now, by my count, the XR Elite only won on 2 things, with 2 additional things being a situational win at best. The ability to use Wi-Fi 6E and the 12 gigabytes of memory are sure wins, while the ability, if you wear glasses, to adjust for prescriptions and the ability to convert to glasses format are situational wins at best. For me, the Pico 4 is the clear winner here. The resolution is greater, the FOV is greater, it's a more comfortable headset to wear, etc., etc., and it's more than half the price. If at some point the XR Elite drops in price like the Quest Pro did, which it should, because it doesn't offer $1,100 of value, I would still place the Pico 4 as the winner, as it's just an all-around better headset. But what do you think? Have you had a chance to use the XR Elite or the Pico 4? What's your take on these 2 headsets? Let me know in the comments below.